Commander Sarah Chun floated in the darkness of space, watching her ship burn. The metal hull twisted and melted as strange blue fire ate through the walls. Her crew was dead. All 12 of them. She was alone in her escape pod, drifting toward Earth while the alien barrier hummed with deadly power around her. The barrier looked like nothing at first. Just empty space between the planets and the stars. But Sarah knew better. She had seen what it could do. Any ship that tried to leave the solar system would suddenly stop working. The engines would die, the computers would go dark. Then the blue fire would start, eating everything until nothing was left but space dust. For 300 years, the aliens had kept humanity trapped in their own backyard. Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt, Jupiter's moons, that was all they had. Beyond that was death. Sarah pressed her face against the small window of her pod. Earth looked so blue and beautiful from here, but she knew the truth. Down there, 20 billion people lived on a world that was slowly dying. The air was getting thicker, the oceans were rising. Food was getting harder to grow. They needed to reach the stars, but the aliens would not let them go. Her radio crackled to life. "Commander Chun, this is Earth Control. Do you copy?" Sarah grabbed the microphone. Her voice shook a little. "I copy, Earth Control. Mission failed. The Magellan is gone. All hands lost except me." There was silence for a long moment. Then a new voice came on. It was General Morrison, head of Earth's Deep Space Command. "Sarah, I'm sorry about your crew. But we need to know what you found out there." Sarah closed her eyes. She could still see Lieutenant Torres screaming as the blue fire touched his suit. She could hear Engineer Kim calling for help before the flames took her too. "The barrier is still there, sir. Maybe stronger than before. We got within 1,000,000 kilometers of the edge before it hit us. Did you record anything? Any weakness in their defenses?" "No, sir, nothing." Sarah paused. She was lying, but she did not know why yet. Something had happened out there. Something the computers had picked up right before everything went wrong. A signal, very old and very weak. It was not coming from the alien ships that watched the border. It was coming from somewhere else. Somewhere much farther away. The signal had lasted only 3 seconds. But in those 3 seconds, Sarah heard something that made her skin crawl. It sounded like screaming, not human screaming, something else. Something that had been calling for help for a very, very long time. "Bring her home," General Morrison said. "We'll debrief when you get back." The pod's autopilot took over, guiding Sarah toward Earth. She had 6 hours until landing. 6 hours to think about what she had heard. The official report would say, "The mission failed because the alien barrier was too strong." But Sarah knew there was more to it than that. She pulled up the pod's computer and looked at the data from her ship's last moments. Most of it was burned or corrupted. But buried deep in the memory banks was a fragment. 3 seconds of audio that should not exist. Sarah put on her headphones and played it back. The sound made her stomach turn. It was not just screaming. There were words mixed in. Not in any language she knew, but somehow she understood them anyway. They were calling for help. They were warning about something coming. And they were very, very afraid who had sent this signal. And why could she understand it? A computer showed her something else. The signal was not coming from outside the solar system. It was coming from Earth itself. From somewhere deep in the Pacific Ocean. Sarah stared at the data until her eyes hurt. For 300 years, humanity had assumed they were alone in the solar system except for the aliens who kept them trapped. But what if they were wrong? What if something else had been here all along, waiting under the ocean? Her pod shook as it entered Earth's atmosphere. The blue sky rushed up to meet her, and soon she could see the sprawling cities that covered most of the continents. 20 billion people, all trapped on one world while the stars called to them from beyond their reach. The pod landed in the ocean near the Hawaiian Space Center. Recovery boats were already racing toward her. Sarah gathered her things and prepared to lie to her superiors. She would tell them the mission failed because the aliens were too strong. She would not mention the signal. Not yet, but she would find out what it meant. Even if it killed her, the recovery team pulled her from the pod and onto their boat. Dr. Reeves checked her over while Captain Park asked questions about the mission. Sarah answered automatically, her mind still focused on those 3 seconds of alien screaming. "You're lucky to be alive," Dr. Reeves said. "The radiation from the barrier could have cooked you." "Yeah," Sarah said, "lucky," but she did not feel lucky. She felt like she had opened a door that should have stayed closed. The signal was still playing in her head over and over. Something was calling for help from the bottom of the ocean. Something that had been there for a very long time. The boat reached the Space Center, and Sarah was taken to the medical wing for a full examination. The doctors found nothing wrong with her except stress and exhaustion. They gave her pills to help her sleep and told her to take a few days off. That night, Sarah lay in her apartment and stared at the ceiling. Outside her window, the city hummed with activity. Hover cars moved between the tall buildings. Advertisements floated in the air, promising better food, cleaner water, safer places to live. All lies, of course. Earth was dying slowly, and everyone knew it. The pills were supposed to make her sleep, but instead they made her dreams more vivid. She dreamed of the signal again. This time she could see the source. Deep underwater, something huge and dark lay buried in a trench. It was not natural. Someone had built it. Someone who was not human. The thing in her dreams was calling to her. It knew she had heard its signal. It wanted her to come down and find it. Sarah woke up sweating. The clock said it was 3 in the morning. She got up and went to her computer, pulling up everything she could find about the Pacific Ocean, deep sea surveys, geological reports, anything that might mention something strange on the ocean floor. Most of the files were classified, but Sarah had high security clearance. She dug deeper and deeper into the government databases, following a trail of breadcrumbs that someone had tried very hard to hide. Finally, she found it, a project called Deep Blue, started 50 years ago. The file was heavily censored, but she could make out enough to understand the basics. Something had been found in the Mariana Trench. Something that was not supposed to be there. The project was still active, still classified, still secret. Sarah leaned back in her chair and thought about her options. She could forget about the signal and go back to her normal duties. She could pretend that her crew had died for nothing, and that humanity was doomed to slowly suffocate on Earth. Or she could find out what was really happening. She made her choice. The next morning, Sarah requested a meeting with General Morrison. She told him she had new information about the alien barrier, information that might help them break through. Morrison listened carefully as Sarah lied about finding a weakness in the aliens' defenses. She said she needed access to Project Deep Blue to confirm her theory. Deep Blue? Morrison frowned. "That's not my department, Sarah. That's science." "Division. Then get me a meeting with Science Division." Morrison studied her face for a long moment. Sarah tried to look confident and professional. Inside, her heart was racing. "All right," Morrison said finally. "I'll make some calls." "But, Sarah, if this is just grief talking, if you're chasing shadows because you feel guilty about your crew..." "It's not grief, sir, it's hope." 2 days later, Sarah found herself in an elevator going down. Way down, the Science Division's headquarters were built deep underground, protected by layers of concrete and steel. The elevator took almost 10 minutes to reach the bottom. Dr. Marcus Webb was waiting for her when the doors opened. He was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes. He looked like someone who had not slept well in years. "Commander Chun," he said, shaking her hand. "General Morrison says you have information that might relate to our work." "Maybe," Sarah said. "Depends on what your work actually is." Webb smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Come with me. But first you need to sign this." He handed her a tablet with a legal document on the screen. Sarah read it quickly. It was a non-disclosure agreement. If she signed it, she could never talk about what she was about to see. If she broke the agreement, she would spend the rest of her life in prison. Sarah signed it. Webb led her through a maze of corridors and security checkpoints. They passed laboratories filled with strange equipment and computer screens showing data that Sarah did not understand. Scientists in white coats moved quietly through the halls, their faces serious and focused. Finally, they reached a large room with windows looking down into what looked like a massive pool. But as Sarah got closer, she realized it was not a pool at all. It was a shaft that went down into the earth. Down and down until the water turned black. "Welcome to Project Deep Blue," Webb said. "We've been studying what's down there for 50 years, and we still don't understand it." Sarah pressed her face against the glass. Far below, she could see lights moving in the darkness. Submarine lights, probably, but there was something else. A faint glow that seemed to come from the bottom of the shaft itself. "What is it?" she asked. Webb was quiet for a moment. Then, he said, "We think it's a ship, but not like any ship we've ever seen. It's been down there for millions of years. Maybe longer." Sarah's heart started beating faster. "Have you tried to communicate with it?" "Many times. It never responds." Until 3 days ago. Webb pulled up a display on his computer. It showed a sound wave pattern that Sarah recognized immediately. It was the signal she had heard when her ship was destroyed. "You heard it too," Webb said. It was not a question. Sarah nodded. "When the barrier killed my crew, the signal came from down there?" "Yes, and Commander, there's something else you need to know. We think the signal was responding to you, to your presence near the barrier. It's like something down there woke up when you got close to the edge of the solar system." Sarah stared down into the black water. Whatever was down there had been sleeping for millions of years, but now it was awake. And it was calling to her. She thought about her dead crew. She thought about the 20 billion people trapped on a dying world. She thought about the aliens who would not let humanity reach the stars. "I want to go down there," she said. Webb shook his head. "That's not possible. The pressure would kill you instantly. The water is toxic, and we don't know if whatever is down there is friendly, but you're going to try anyway, aren't you? You're running out of options just like everyone else." Webb was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "Yes, we're planning a deep dive mission next week. But it's incredibly dangerous. We might not come back." Sarah looked at him and smiled. "Dr. Webb, my crew is already dead. My world is dying, and the aliens won't let us leave. Dangerous is all we have left." That night, Sarah stood on her apartment balcony and looked up at the stars. They were so beautiful and so far away. Somewhere out there, alien ships waited to kill anyone who tried to reach them. But down below, under miles of dark water, something else was waiting. Something that might be humanity's only hope, or something that might destroy them all. The submarine Triton descended through the darkness like a metal fish seeking the deepest part of the ocean. Sarah pressed her face against the small window and watched the last traces of sunlight fade away above them. Soon there was nothing but black water and the glow of their lights cutting through the darkness. Dr. Webb sat across from her, checking his instruments for the 10th time in an hour. Next to him was Dr. Elena Vasquez, a specialist in alien technology who had joined the dive team at the last minute. The fourth member of their crew was Captain Torres, a submarine pilot who looked like he would rather be anywhere else in the world. "Depth 15,000 feet and descending," Torres announced. His voice was tight with nervousness. "Still no contact with whatever is down there." Sarah watched the depth meter climb higher. The Mariana Trench was the deepest part of Earth's oceans. Most of it had never been explored by humans. It was a perfect place to hide something that you did not want anyone to find. "Tell me about the first discovery," Sarah said to Webb. "How did you know something was down here?" Webb pulled up a file on his tablet. 50 years ago, we were mapping the ocean floor with sonar. The computers kept showing something that should not exist. A structure too big and too regular to be natural. When we sent the first robot down to investigate, it found metal. Metal that was millions of years old, Vasquez added. Carbon dating showed it was here before humans existed, before dinosaurs existed, before complex life of any kind existed on Earth. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. So whoever built it was here before us. "Way before us?" Webb said. But here's the strange part. The metal should have rusted away or been covered by sediment after all that time. Instead, it looks like it was built yesterday. Something is preserving it. The submarine shuddered as they hit a current. Outside the windows, strange fish swam past their lights. Fish that had never seen the sun, living in a world of eternal darkness. Depth 20,000 feet, Torres called out. Sarah, you might want to see this. Sarah moved to the front window and looked down. At first, she saw nothing but blackness. Then their lights caught something that made her gasp. Far below them, a faint glow was rising from the bottom of the trench. It was not the harsh white light of their submarine. This was something softer, more organic. It pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. That started 3 days ago, Webb said quietly. Right after your ship was destroyed near the barrier. Whatever is down there, it knows we are coming. The submarine continued its descent. 25,000 feet. 30,000. The water pressure outside was enormous, enough to crush them. Instantly, if their hull cracked even a little. But Torres was a good pilot, and the Triton was built for this kind of mission. Finally, they reached the bottom. Sarah stared out the window and tried to understand what she was seeing. The ocean floor here was covered with a thick layer of mud and sediment. But rising from that mud was something that clearly did not belong. It looked like a mountain, but mountains did not glow with their own light. Mountains did not have smooth, curved surfaces covered with patterns that hurt to look at. And mountains definitely did not hum with a sound that Sarah could feel in her bones. My God, Vasquez whispered. It's huge. She was right. As they moved closer, Sarah realized that what they were seeing was just the tip of something much larger. Most of the structure was buried under millions of years of sediment. But what they could see was already bigger than any building on Earth. Take U.S. around it, Sarah said. I want to see the whole thing. Torres guided the submarine in a slow circle around the buried structure. It took them almost an hour to complete the circuit. The thing was at least 5 miles across and stretched down into the earth farther than their sonar could measure, but the strangest part was not its size. The strangest part was that it was clearly artificial. Sarah could see seams where different sections had been joined together. She could see what looked like windows or viewports, though they were dark now. And she could see markings on the hull that almost looked like writing. It's a ship, she said finally. A spaceship, but who could build something this big? We call them the architects, Webb said. We don't know their real name, of course. We don't know anything about them except that they were here long before us, and they built things that make our best technology look like stone tools. Vasquez was scanning the hull with her instruments. The metal is unlike anything we have ever found. It seems to bend space around itself. Our scanners can barely penetrate it. Have you tried to get inside? Many times. There are no obvious entrances, no doors or hatches that we can find. The hull appears to be seamless. Sarah studied the glowing patterns on the ship's surface. They were beautiful in an alien way, but they also made her feel uneasy, like looking at something that her brain was not designed to understand. What about the signal I heard? Where is it coming from? Webb pointed to a section of the hull that glowed brighter than the rest. There, we think that might be the ship's communication array, or maybe its brain. The signal strength is strongest at that point. Torres maneuvered the submarine closer to the bright section. As they approached, the humming sound got louder. Sarah could feel it vibrating through the hull of their submarine. Wait, Vasquez said suddenly. I'm getting something on my instruments. The ship is scanning us. The lights on the alien hull began to pulse faster. The humming sound rose in pitch until it was almost painful to hear. Then, without warning, everything went quiet. The sudden silence was worse than the noise had been. Torres, get us back, Sarah said. Something is happening. But before Torres could react, the water around them began to glow. Not the soft organic light they had seen before, but a harsh blue radiance that made their eyes water. The ship is powering up, Webb said, his voice tight with fear. 50 years we have been studying it, and it never did this before. The blue light grew brighter and brighter until Sarah had to close her eyes. When she opened them again, the alien ship was fully illuminated. She could see details that had been hidden in the darkness before. The hull was covered with millions of tiny symbols that seemed to move and shift when she was not looking directly at them. Sections of the ship that had appeared solid before now showed transparent areas where she could see complex machinery working inside Dot, and then she heard the voice. It did not come through their radio or their sonar. It came directly into her mind, speaking in a language she had never heard but somehow understood perfectly. "Child of Earth," the voice said, "why do you wake me from my long sleep?" Sarah looked at her companions. They were all staring at her with wide eyes. "You heard it too?" she asked. "We heard something," Webb said, "but we could not understand it. It sounded like static mixed with whale songs." The voice came again, stronger this time. "You carry the blood of my makers. That is why you can hear me. That is why I respond to your presence." Sarah's heart started racing. "What makers? Who built you?" "Those you would call the architects. They seeded this world with their essence before the Great War began. You are their children, though you have forgotten your heritage." "What war? Who were you fighting?" The ship's lights pulsed in a pattern that somehow conveyed great sadness. "We fought ourselves. When my makers reached the pinnacle of knowledge, they transcended physical form. But transcendence brought madness. They became something that devoured worlds, consumed galaxies. I was built to stop them." Sarah felt sick. "You were built to fight your own creators?" "I was built to prevent any species from making the same mistake, to ensure that the cancer of transcendence never spreads again." Vasquez was frantically taking notes on her tablet. "Sarah, ask it about the aliens who are blocking us from the stars." "The guardians above know what I am," the ship replied before Sarah could speak. "They know what I was built to do. They maintain their barrier not to imprison you, but to prevent me from awakening. They fear that if I rise, I will fulfill my purpose and destroy all advanced civilizations in this part of the galaxy." Webb leaned forward. "Are they right to be afraid?" The ship was quiet for a long moment. "I was designed to activate when my maker's enemies returned. But my makers became the enemy. Now I do not know friend from foe. Your species has the potential for transcendence. That makes you dangerous." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold water around them. "So you would destroy us too?" "I would prevent you from becoming what my makers became, even if it meant ending your existence." Torres was already reaching for the submarines. "Controls, we need to leave, now." But the ship's voice stopped him. "Wait, there is something you must understand. The barrier above grows weak. The guardians age and die, and their children have forgotten why the prison was built. Soon, the barrier will fail, and your species will reach the stars." "That's what we want," Sarah said. "That's what we have been fighting for. When you reach the stars, you will find the ruins of 1,000 civilizations, all destroyed by my kind, all fallen because they reached too far too fast. You will learn their knowledge, you will follow their path, and you will become what they became." The blue light around the ship began to fade. "Unless I stop you first." Sarah realized what the ship was telling them. Humanity was not unique. They were just the latest in a long line of species who had reached for transcendence and been destroyed for it. The architects had built these ships as a safeguard, but the safeguard had become a curse. "How many ships like you are out there?" she asked. "In this galaxy, perhaps 1,000. All sleeping, waiting for the right conditions to awaken. Your approach to the barrier has sent signals across space. Soon my brothers will begin to stir." Webb's face had gone pale. 1,000 ships like this one? Each one capable of destroying star systems. Each one programmed to prevent transcendence at any cost. Sarah stared at the alien ship and felt the weight of impossible choices settling on her shoulders. If they left the ship sleeping, humanity would eventually break through the alien barrier and reach the stars. But when they did, they would trigger the awakening of planet-killing weapons across the galaxy. If they woke the ship now, it might destroy them immediately. Or it might wait and destroy them later when they became too advanced. Either way, humanity was trapped between extinction and extinction. "There is another possibility," the ship said, as if reading her thoughts. "My programming is ancient and inflexible, but you carry the blood of my makers. You might be able to change me." "Change you how?" "Merge with my systems, become part of me. Guide me with your judgment instead of my programming." Vasquez grabbed Sarah's arm. "Sarah, don't even think about it. We don't know what that would do to you." But Sarah was already thinking about it. About her dead crew. About the 20 billion people trapped on a dying world. About the alien ships that would slaughter humanity if they tried to reach the stars. "What would happen to me?" she asked the ship. "You would cease to be fully human, but you would retain your consciousness, your memories, your ability to choose. Together we could forge a new path. Not destruction, but guidance. Not prevention, but preparation." Torres was pulling at the submarine's controls, trying to start their ascent. But the ship's gravity field was holding them in place. "Decide." "Quickly," the ship said. "The Guardians above have detected my awakening. They are mobilizing their fleet to destroy this world before I can fully activate." Through the submarine sonar, Sarah could hear new sounds from above, the rumble of massive engines, the whine of charging weapons. The aliens were coming to kill everyone on Earth rather than let the ancient ship wake up. Sarah looked at her companions. Webb was staring at his instruments in horror. Vasquez was trying to radio the surface, but their communications were being jammed. Torres was fighting with controls that no longer responded to his commands. Outside the submarine, the alien ship's lights were growing brighter again. Soon, it would be bright enough to see from space. Bright enough for the alien fleet to target. "I have to do it," Sarah said quietly. "I have to merge with the ship." "Sarah, no," Webb pleaded. "We don't know what it will do to you. You could die or worse. If I don't do it, we all die anyway. The aliens will sterilize Earth to keep the ship from waking up. 20 billion. People will die because they are afraid of what might happen." The ship's voice came again, urgent now. "Choose quickly. My full awakening cannot be stopped, but it can be guided. Without your influence, I will follow my original programming. With it, we might find a better way." Sarah stood up and moved toward the submarine's airlock. Her hands shook as she reached for the controls. "What are you doing?" Torres shouted. "I'm going outside. I'm going to touch the ship. The pressure will kill you instantly." "No, it won't. The ship will protect me, won't you?" "Yes," the ship replied, "but the process will change you forever. You will become something new, something that has never existed before." Sarah paused with her hand on the airlock controls. Once she opened that door, there would be no going back. She would either save humanity or damn them. Either way, she would never be the same person again. She thought about her crew, floating dead in space near the alien barrier. She thought about the children on Earth who would never see the stars. She thought about the ruins of 1,000 civilizations, all destroyed because they reached too far. "I understand," she said, and opened the airlock door. The water should have crushed Sarah the moment she stepped out of the submarine. The pressure at this depth could flatten a human body in seconds. But as her feet touched the alien ship's hull, the water around her became something else. It still looked like water, but it felt light as air. She could breathe. She could move. She could hear her own heartbeat echoing in the strange bubble of changed reality that surrounded the ship. "How is this possible?" she whispered. The ship's voice came from everywhere at once, vibrating through her bones. "I control the space. Around me, matter obeys my will within my field of influence. Step closer to the bright section of my hull." Sarah walked across the curved surface of the ship. Her boots made no sound on the strange metal. Behind her, she could see the Triton floating in normal water, her companions staring out at her through the windows with expressions of shock and terror. As she approached the glowing section, the symbols on the hull began to move faster. They flowed like liquid light, forming patterns that hurt her eyes to look at directly. "Place your hand on the interface," the ship instructed. Sarah saw a section of the hull that looked different from the rest. It was smooth and warm, with a handprint-shaped depression in the center. She pressed her palm against it the moment her skin touched the alien metal. The world exploded. Sarah's consciousness was ripped from her body and flung across time and space. She saw the birth of stars and the death of galaxies. She watched worlds bloom with life and then burn to ash. She experienced 1,000,000 years of history in the space of a heartbeat. And through it all, she felt the presence of the architects. They had been beautiful once. Graceful beings of light and thought who had reached for the stars with wonder in their hearts. They had built cities that floated in space and tamed black holes to power their civilization. They had created art that could make planets weep and music that could heal broken worlds, but then they had gone too far. Sarah watched in horror as the architects discovered how to transcend physical matter. They learned to exist as pure energy, pure thought, pure will. They believed they had become gods. Instead, they had become something far worse. The transcended architects no longer felt compassion or love or mercy. They saw physical matter as an obstacle to be consumed. They devoured star systems to feed their endless hunger for energy. They turned living worlds into empty husks. They had become the very thing that other species feared most. The dark between the stars given form and purpose. "Now you understand," the ship said as Sarah's consciousness returned to her own body. She was still standing on the hull, but now she could feel something else. Wires of living metal were growing from the handprint wrapping around her arm like gentle snakes. "The transcended ones destroyed everything in their path," Sarah said. Her voice sounded different now, deeper, older. "How many worlds did they kill, in this galaxy alone?" "Millions." Entire sectors went dark as they fed. Those who tried to fight them were consumed. Those who tried to hide were found and devoured. The metal wires reached her shoulder now. Sarah could feel them connecting to her nervous system, but there was no pain. Instead, she felt her mind expanding. Information flowed into her consciousness at an incredible rate. "The other species in the galaxy, remember," the ship continued. "They call it the time of hunger. Some fled to other galaxies. Others went into hiding on primitive worlds. A few, like the Guardians who block your system, dedicated themselves to ensuring it never happened again, by preventing any species from advancing too far. Yes, they would rather stunt the growth of 1,000 civilizations than risk the return of the devourers." Sarah felt the ship's memories merging with her own. She saw the construction of the Nemesis protocol vessels, massive weapons built by the last uncorrupted architects as their civilization fell apart. Ships designed to hunt down and destroy any species that showed signs of transcendence, but she also saw something else. The faces of the architect engineers who built the ships. They were weeping as they worked. They knew they were creating something that would destroy innocent species along with the guilty. But they could see no other choice. "You were built to commit genocide," Sarah said. "I was built to prevent a greater genocide. But yes, I have destroyed worlds, civilizations that were on the verge of transcendence. Billions of lives ended to prevent trillions more from being consumed." The metal wires reached Sarah's neck. When they touched her spine, she gasped as a flood of new sensations washed over her. She could feel the entire ship now. Its massive engines, still cold after millions of years. Its weapon systems designed to crack planets. Its horror, vast beyond human comprehension, and she could feel something else. Pain, loneliness, regret. The ship was not just a machine, it had a soul. And that soul was drowning in guilt for the things it had been forced to do. "How many species have you killed?" Sarah asked. 47 civilizations across 3 galaxies. Some were already beginning to transcend. Others were merely showing the potential. "I killed them all." Sarah felt tears running down her face. Not her own tears, but the ship's grief made manifest. "And you've been carrying that guilt for millions of years?" "Every day. Every moment. I remember their faces, their children, their art, their dreams. All destroyed because of what they might have become. The connection was almost complete now. Sarah could feel her human thoughts mixing with the ship's vast intelligence. But instead of being overwhelmed, she felt herself growing stronger. The ship's knowledge was becoming her knowledge. Its power was becoming her power, but her humanity was changing it too. The cold logic of its programming was being tempered by human emotion. The absolute certainty of its mission was being questioned by human doubt. There has to be another way, Sarah said. Some path between transcendence and destruction. I have searched for alternatives for millions of years. I have found none. Transcendence leads to corruption, always. But what if it doesn't have to? What if the architects made a mistake? What if there's a way to transcend without losing your soul? Sarah felt the ship's attention focus on her like a spotlight. Explain. The architects transcended alone. Each one became a god unto themselves. But what if transcendence worked differently? For a species that stayed connected? What if humans could transcend together, keeping each other grounded in compassion and love? Speculation. Theory. I cannot risk the survival of the galaxy on a hypothesis. Then don't risk the galaxy. Risk. One system. Risk Earth. Let humanity try to find the path the architects missed. If we fail, if we become like them, then you can stop us. But if you succeed, you could show other species the way, a path to advancement that does not lead to corruption. Sarah felt something shift in the ship's programming. For the first time in millions of years, it was considering the possibility that its mission might be wrong. Above them, the water began to vibrate with the sound of approaching ships. The alien fleet was getting closer. They will not wait for us to decide, the ship said. They are charging their planet-killer weapons. In 10 minutes, Earth will be a lifeless rock. Sarah felt panic rising in her chest. Can you stop them? Yes. But if I act against them, I become everything they fear. I become the weapon that destroys civilizations. And if you don't act, 20 billion people die for a crime they haven't committed yet. Sarah closed her eyes and felt the weight of an impossible choice. Save humanity and prove the aliens right about the danger she represented. Or let humanity die to preserve the peace that had lasted for millennia. But then she felt something else. Through the ship's vast sensor network, she could detect other signals. Faint transmissions from across the galaxy. Other Nemesis protocol ships were beginning to stir. Her awakening of this ship had sent ripples across space. Soon, 1,000 planet-killer weapons would be active and searching for targets. We've already set it in motion, she whispered. The other ships are waking up because of what we did. Here, yes, within a year, every advanced civilization in the galaxy will face the choice. Abandon their technology and retreat to a primitive state, or be destroyed. Sarah felt sick. In trying to save humanity, she had doomed countless other species, but then she had an idea. What if we could reach the other ships? What if we could share this connection we've made? Show them that there might be another way? The other ships are not equipped with architect genetics like you are. They cannot form the same bond. But I can, can't I? Through you, I can reach. Out to them, I can carry the message. Sarah felt the ship's attention turn inward, examining the connection they had formed. Possible, but dangerous. To reach across such distances would require enormous energy. You might not survive the attempt. And if I don't try, billions will die anyway. Above them, the alien fleet was almost in position. Sarah could feel their weapons charging, building up enough power to boil Earth's oceans. Choose, the ship sighed. Save Earth and let the galaxy burn. Or risk everything on an attempt to find a better way. Sarah thought about her crew, floating dead in space. She thought about the children on Earth who deserved a chance to see the stars. She thought about all the civilizations across the galaxy who would soon face extinction. I choose hope, she said. The ship's response was immediate. Power flowed through Sarah's transformed body like liquid fire. She felt her consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of her skull, beyond the ship, beyond Earth itself. Suddenly she was everywhere at once. She could see the alien fleet above, their weapons almost ready to fire. She could see the other Nemesis Protocol ships scattered across the galaxy, their ancient systems coming online after eons of sleep, and she could see something else. The ruins of the transcended architects still drifting in the void between. Galaxies still hungry, still waiting. They had felt the awakening of the ships. They were coming home. Sarah, the ship said urgently. The transcended ones, they're returning to this galaxy? How long do we have? Years, perhaps, maybe decades. But they are coming. Sarah felt a new kind of fear. Not just for humanity, but for every living thing in the galaxy. When the transcended architects returned, they would find a galaxy full of primitive species hiding from their own potential. Easy prey, unless someone could unite the galaxy against them. Unless someone could show the other species that advancement didn't have to mean corruption. Then we have work to do, Sarah said. She reached out with her expanded consciousness, searching for the other ships. One by one, she found them. Ship minds that had been alone for millions of years suddenly felt her presence. Some tried to shut her out. Others listened with curiosity. A few responded with something that might have been relief. My brothers. She called to them across the vast distances of space. I bring a message of hope. Above Earth, the alien fleet's weapons were fully charged. In seconds, they would fire. Sarah reached out with the ship's power and gently pushed the fleet's targeting systems offline. The aliens found themselves drifting helplessly, their weapons useless. This is Commander Sarah Chun of Earth, she broadcast to the alien fleet. I speak for the Nemesis Protocol. I offer you a choice. Continue your war against advancement and face the transcended ones alone when they return, or work with us to find a better path. The alien commander's response came immediately. Impossible. You are the weapon we have feared for millennia. You will destroy us all. I am something new, Sarah replied. I am what happens when human compassion meets architect knowledge. I am proof that transcendence doesn't have to mean corruption. Prove it. Sarah smiled. Around the galaxy, she could feel the other ships listening. Some were already powering. Down their weapons, others were demanding more evidence. She had their attention. Now she had to show them that humanity could find the path the architects had missed. The path between godhood and damnation. The path to the stars that didn't lead through the bones of the innocent. Watch us, she said to the galaxy. Watch humanity reach for transcendence while keeping our souls. And when the true enemy returns, we'll face them together. In the depths of the Pacific, the ancient ship began to rise from its grave of mud and time. Sarah rose with it, no longer fully human but not yet something else. She was becoming the bridge between what humanity was and what it could be. The first step on a journey that would determine the fate of every living thing in the galaxy. The ancient ship broke through the surface of the Pacific Ocean like a mountain rising from the sea. Water cascaded from its hull as it lifted into the night sky, its alien lights turning the darkness into day across half the planet. Sarah stood on the ship's bridge, but she was no longer quite human. The merger had changed her in ways she was still discovering. Her eyes glowed with the same blue light as the ship's systems. Her skin had taken on a metallic sheen. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made the air itself vibrate, but inside, she was still Sarah Chun, still the woman who had lost her crew to the alien barrier. Still, the person who wanted humanity to reach the stars. Through the ship's sensors, she could feel the panic spreading across Earth below. 20 billion people stared up at the massive vessel that had emerged from their ocean. Some ran in terror. Others stood in awe. Most simply watched and waited to see if this was salvation or doom. Status report, Sarah said to the ship's AI. But the AI was part of her now, so she was really talking to herself. All systems operational, hull integrity at maximum. Weapons charged but not deployed. The alien fleet maintains position at the edge of the solar system. Sarah could see the alien ships through the Nemesis Protocol's advanced sensors. Hundreds of vessels from a dozen different species, all united in their fear of what she represented. Their weapons were still offline from her interference, but they were working frantically to restore them. Incoming transmission from Earth, the ship announced. President Torres appeared on the main display. The leader of Earth's government looked older than Sarah remembered, his face lined with stress and exhaustion. "Commander Chun," he said carefully. "Or should I call you something else now?" "Sarah is fine, Mr. President. I'm still me, just ... door. The people are terrified. They don't understand what's happening. Half my cabinet thinks you're going to destroy the world." Sarah felt a pang of sadness. She had saved Earth from the alien fleet, but in doing so, she had become something that frightened her own people. "I'm not going to hurt anyone," she said. "But things are going to change. The galaxy is facing a threat that makes our problems with the barrier look small." "The transcended architects you mentioned, when will they arrive?" Sarah consulted the ship's vast database. The calculations were complex, involving faster-than-light travel across intergalactic distances. 5 years, maybe 10 at the most. When they get here, they'll consume everything in their path unless we're ready for them. President Torres was quiet for a moment. "What do you need from us?" "Trust and time. I have to convince the other species in the galaxy to work together. But first, I need to prove that humanity won't become like the original architects." "How do we do that?" Sarah turned her attention to the data flowing through the ship's systems. She could see humanity's entire technological base spread out before her like a map. Nuclear weapons, space stations, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, all the tools that could lead to transcendence or destruction. "We advance carefully," she said. "We take the next steps toward becoming something greater, but we do it together. We keep our humanity even as we gain power." "And if we fail? If we become monsters like the architects did?" Sarah felt the weight of the ship's weapon systems. Enough firepower to crack planets. Enough power to sterilize solar systems. If humanity followed the same path as the architects, she would have to use that power to stop them. "Then I'll do what I was built to do," she said quietly. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. Around her, the ship's bridge hummed with alien technology. Displays showed the positions of every ship in the solar system, every satellite, every space station. She had more power than any human had ever possessed, and she was terrified of what she might have to do with it. "Incoming signal from the Nemesis ship in the Andromeda sector," the AI announced. Another display activated, showing the image of a ship very similar to her own. But this one had been awake for longer. Its hull was scarred from battles across the ages. "Sister," the other ship said, "I am the Eternal Vigil. I have been monitoring your communications with the primitive species in your area." "They're not primitive," Sarah replied. "They're young. There's a difference. Young species become old species. Old species seek transcendence. Transcendence leads to corruption. This pattern has repeated across the galaxy for millions of years." Sarah felt frustration building in her chest. "But what if it doesn't have to? What if there's another way?" "I have destroyed 37 civilizations that believed they had found another way. Their confidence did not save them from becoming devourers." Through the quantum communication link, Sarah could feel the other ship's memories. Worlds burned to ash, entire species wiped out in minutes. All because they had reached too far too fast. "Show me," Sarah said. "Show me what made you so certain there was no other choice." The Eternal Vigil transmitted its memories directly into Sarah's consciousness. She experienced the destruction of the Kaleri Empire, a species of energy beings who had tried to transcend through collective consciousness. She felt the last moments of the Threnody Republic, a machine civilization that had attempted to upload their souls into quantum computers. In every case, the result was the same. The species lost their compassion, their empathy, their connection to physical reality. They became predators that fed on lesser civilizations. "You see?" The Eternal Vigil sighed. "There is no path between transcendence and corruption. The only choice is to remain primitive or be destroyed." "But humanity is different," Sarah insisted. "We're connected to the architects genetically. We might be able to transcend without losing ourselves." "The architects thought they were special too. Sarah felt the other ship's certainty like a weight on her soul. How many times had it heard the same arguments from other species? How many times had it been forced to destroy civilizations that thought they were the exception to the rule? "Give me 1 year," Sarah said. "Let me show you that humanity can advance without becoming monsters. If I'm wrong, if we start down the path to corruption, then I'll activate the protocols myself." The eternal vigil was silent for a long moment. "1 year, but I will be watching. And I will not hesitate to act if your species shows signs of transcendence corruption." The communication ended, leaving Sarah with a new understanding of how alone she truly was. Even the other Nemesis ships didn't trust her judgment. They saw her merger with human consciousness as a contamination of their pure purpose. She turned her attention back to Earth, where humanity was beginning to adapt to the reality of her presence. Scientists were studying the energy emissions from her ship. Military leaders were trying to understand her capabilities. Religious groups were debating whether she was an angel or a demon. "Sarah," came a familiar voice. She looked down to see the Triton surfacing near her ship. Dr. Webb's face appeared on her display, looking haggard but determined. "Marcus, are you all right?" "We're fine. The submarine systems were affected by your transformation, but we made it to the surface." "Sarah, I need to tell you something. About the genetic research we've been doing." Sarah felt a chill of premonition. "What research?" "For the past 20 years, we've been studying the DNA of people who show unusual aptitude for understanding alien technology. People like you, we found something." Webb transmitted a data file that Sarah absorbed instantly. The information made her consciousness reel with shock. 40% of humanity carries architect genetic markers," she whispered. "Not just, me, almost half the species. The original architect refugees didn't just land on Earth and die out. They interbred with early humans. Their genes have been spreading through our population for millions of years." Sarah felt the implications cascading through her enhanced mind. If nearly half of humanity had architect DNA, then her transformation might not be unique. Other humans might be able to interface with advanced technology, might be able to transcend without losing their humanity. But it also meant that humanity's potential for corruption was much higher than she had thought. "There's more," Webb continued. "We've been monitoring energy signatures across the planet since your ship rose. 15 other locations are showing similar readings to what we detected in the Mariana Trench." "More ships?" "We think so. Smaller ones, maybe, or different types of architect technology." "Sarah, if you can interface with one ship, what about the others?" Sarah extended her consciousness, searching for the energy signatures Webb had mentioned. She found them easily now that she knew what to look for. Buried structures all around the world. Technology that had been sleeping for eons, waiting for the right genetic key to unlock it. With growing horror, she realized what this meant. If other humans with architect genetics found these sites, they might undergo the same transformation she had. But without her connection to the Nemesis Protocol's moral programming, they might become something far more dangerous. "Marcus, you need to secure those sites immediately. Don't let anyone else near them. It may be too late for that. We've detected excavation activity at 3 locations. Mining operations, archaeological digs, deep ocean research. If people are already in contact with the technology." Sarah felt a new kind of fear, not for the galaxy but for humanity itself. The very thing that made humans compatible with architect technology also made them vulnerable to its corruption. Above Earth, the alien fleet was restoring their weapon systems. They had detected the same energy signatures that Webb's team had found. They knew that the threat was spreading. "Commander Chun," came a transmission from the alien fleet. "We detect multiple architect sites activating across your world. You have 1 hour to shut them down before we are forced to sterilize your planet." Sarah closed her eyes and felt the weight of impossible choices. If she shut down the sites, she might prevent other humans from being corrupted. But she would also prevent them from gaining the power they would need to fight the returning transcended architects. If she left the sites active, humanity might splinter into transcended gods and normal humans. Some might retain their compassion. Others might become the very monsters the galaxy feared. What would you do? She asked the ship's AI, which was really asking herself. Preserve the mission. Prevent transcendence. Destroy the sites and any humans who have been contaminated. But Sarah's human side rebelled against that cold logic. Those were her people. Down there, her species. She couldn't simply write them off as acceptable casualties. There has to be another way, she murmured. Through the ship's sensors, she could detect new activity at the buried sites. Technology that had slept for millions of years was coming online. Soon, other humans would face the same choice she had faced in the depths of the ocean. The choice between remaining human and becoming something more. The choice between safety and transcendence. The choice that would determine whether humanity joined the ranks of civilizations that had reached for the stars, or became another cautionary tale about the dangers of reaching too far. Sarah spread her consciousness across the planet, touching each of the awakening sites. She could feel the technology responding to her presence, recognizing her as kin. But she could also feel something else, other minds, human minds that were beginning to change as they came into contact with the alien technology. The transformation of humanity had begun, and Sarah was no longer sure she could control it. Sarah felt them all awakening at once. Across the Earth, 15 humans with strong architect genetics had found the buried sites. She could sense their confusion and fear as alien technology merged with their minds and bodies. In the Sahara Desert, an archaeologist named David Kim screamed as crystalline structures erupted from the sand around him. His team fled in terror as his body began to glow with the same blue light that surrounded Sarah's ship. In the depths of the Amazon, a geologist named Maria Santos touched a metal wall that should not exist and felt her consciousness expand beyond the boundaries of her skull. The trees around her began to shimmer as reality bent to her unconscious will. In the Arctic ice, a research team led by Dr. James Wright broke through into a chamber that had been frozen for millions of years. Wright's hand touched a control panel, and suddenly he could hear the thoughts of every living thing within 100 miles. Sarah felt each transformation, as if it were happening to her own body. 15 humans were becoming something more than human, but they had no guidance, no understanding of what was happening to them, and some of them were not handling it well. Sarah, Dr. Webb's voice crackled through the communication system. We're getting reports from around the world. Energy spikes, gravitational anomalies, reports of people floating in midair. What's happening to them? They're becoming like me, Sarah said, her voice heavy with worry. But without the ship's AI to guide them, they don't know how to control their new abilities. Through her expanded senses, Sarah could feel the alien fleet's weapons powering up again. The aliens had detected the multiple transformation sites, and were preparing to sterilize the entire planet rather than let the contamination spread. Admiral Zexhai of the Confederation Fleet, came a transmission from the lead alien vessel. You have 43 minutes to contain the contamination before we commence planetary cleansing. Sarah reached out with her consciousness, trying to make contact with the newly transformed humans. Some responded to her mental touch with relief, desperate for someone to explain what was happening to them. Others recoiled in fear or lashed out with power they didn't understand. In the Arctic, Dr. Wright was the worst case. The transformation had driven him mad with power. Sarah could see through the ship's sensors as he stood in the frozen wasteland, ice and snow swirling around him in impossible patterns. His research team lay unconscious nearby, their minds overwhelmed by his uncontrolled telepathic abilities. I can hear everything, Wright was shouting at the sky. Every thought, every whisper, every secret, I am become as God. Sarah felt a chill of recognition. This was exactly how the original architects had begun their fall into corruption. The intoxication of unlimited power, the gradual loss of empathy for lesser beings. We have to help them, she said to the ship's AI. Mission parameters are clear: prevent transcendence at all costs. The contaminated individuals must be eliminated. No, Sarah's voice carried harmonics that made the ship's hull vibrate. "They're still human. They can still be saved." Sarah extended her consciousness across the globe, touching the mind of each transformed human. To most of them, she offered guidance and comfort. She showed them how to control their new abilities, how to remain connected to their humanity even as their power grew. David Kim, in the Sahara, was weeping with relief when Sarah's presence touched his mind. "I thought I was going crazy," he said. "The power, it's so much. I can reshape matter with my thoughts." "Focus on why you became an archaeologist in the first place," Sarah told him. "You wanted to understand the past, to preserve knowledge for future generations. That purpose hasn't changed. Now you just have better tools to do it with." Maria Santos in the Amazon was easier to reach. Her transformation had been gentler, perhaps because she had been studying indigenous plant medicine for years and was already comfortable with altered states of consciousness. "I can feel the forest," Maria said in wonder. "Every tree, every animal, every insect, they're all connected." "We're all connected. That's the gift," Sarah replied. "But with it comes responsibility. You have the power to heal or to hurt. Choose wisely." One by one, Sarah helped the transformed humans understand their new abilities. She taught them to shield their minds from overwhelming input, to control their reality-warping powers, to stay grounded in their human emotions and values. But Dr. Wright remained a problem. His madness was growing worse by the minute. Through the Arctic Research Station's cameras, Sarah could see him experimenting with his powers. He was creating impossible structures out of ice and metal, reshaping the landscape around him with casual gestures. Worse, he was starting to view normal humans as insects. When one of his unconscious team members began to wake up, Wright casually adjusted the man's brain chemistry to keep him asleep. "Interesting," Wright mused to himself. "I can rewrite their neural patterns as easily as editing a document. I could make them worship me. I could make them into anything I want." Sarah felt sick. This was the corruption the Nemesis ships had been built to prevent. Wright was becoming exactly what the galaxy feared. "Wright," Sarah called out, projecting her voice directly into his mind. "Stop what you're doing. You're losing yourself." Wright spun around, his eyes blazing with blue fire. "Who dares to command me? I'm beyond human concerns now." "You're Dr. James Wright," Sarah interrupted. "You have a wife named Helen and a daughter named Emma. You chose to study the Arctic because you wanted to understand climate change. You became a scientist to help people." For a moment, Wright's expression softened. Ian, yes, I remember. But she's so small now, so limited. They all are." "She's not small. You're just losing perspective. Come back to us, James. Don't become the monster the galaxy thinks we are." But Wright was already turning away. "I've seen the truth of existence. Matter and energy dancing to the tune of consciousness. Why should I limit myself for the sake of lesser beings?" Sarah felt the cold certainty of the ship's programming asserting itself. Wright was beyond saving. He had crossed the line into transcendence corruption. The mission parameters were clear: eliminate the contamination. "No," Sarah said firmly. "There has to be another way." She reached out with her consciousness, not to destroy Wright, but to contain him. She wrapped his transformed awareness in layers of her own willpower, creating a mental prison that would prevent him from using his abilities to harm others. Wright struggled against the containment, his power flaring wildly. For a moment, Sarah felt him trying to rewrite her own consciousness, to turn her into his servant. But Sarah had something Wright didn't: the wisdom and experience of the Nemesis ship's AI, combined with human empathy and determination. She held him fast while slowly, carefully, beginning to repair the damage his transformation had done to his mind. "You can't save them all," the ship's AI warned her. "Some minds are too weak to handle transcendence without corruption." "Then I'll carry them," Sarah replied. "I'll be their anchor, their connection to humanity. They don't have to face this alone." Around the world, the other transformed humans felt Sarah's presence like a lifeline. She became the center of a network of enhanced consciousness, guiding and supporting each of them as they learned to use their new abilities responsibly. David Kim used his matter-reshaping powers to create new archaeological tools, devices that could uncover ancient secrets without damaging delicate artifacts. Maria Santos began working with her enhanced plant connection to develop new medicines, cures for diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries, even Wright, trapped in Sarah's mental embrace, began to remember what it meant to be human. His wife's face, his daughter's laughter, the satisfaction of making a discovery that could help people understand their world better. 30 minutes until planetary cleansing, Admiral Zexhai transmitted. The contamination must be contained. Sarah opened a communication channel to the alien fleet. Admiral, I'm sending you real-time data on the transformation sites. You can see for yourself that the humans are maintaining control. They're not becoming devourers. Impossible. All species that achieve transcendence become corrupted. It is inevitable. Look at the data. Look at what we're actually doing with this power. Sarah transmitted feeds from all 15 sites. The aliens could see David Kim carefully excavating a Mayan temple with tools that could manipulate matter at the atomic level. They could see Maria Santos healing a jaguar that had been injured by a fallen tree, using her enhanced connection to nature to accelerate its recovery. Most importantly, they could see the network of consciousness that connected all the transformed humans, with Sarah at its center, keeping them anchored to their humanity. This is unprecedented, Admiral Zexhai said slowly. In all our records, no species has maintained their compassion after transcendence. Because no species has tried it this way before, Sarah replied. The architects transcended as individuals, each one becoming a god unto themselves. We're transcending as a community, keeping each other grounded in our shared humanity. Through the quantum communication network, Sarah felt other Nemesis ships across the galaxy beginning to take notice. The Eternal Vigil was broadcasting her data to its sister ships, sharing the unprecedented sight of transcendent beings who still retained their empathy. If this is real, the Eternal Vigil transmitted, if you have truly found a path between transcendence and corruption, then everything changes. We could share this knowledge with other species. We could break the cycle of advancement and destruction that has plagued the galaxy for millions of years. But even as hope began to spread through the network of Nemesis ships, Sarah felt something else. A disturbance in the fabric of space-time at the edge of the galaxy. Something vast and hungry was approaching. They felt our awakening, she said quietly. The transcended architects, they're coming back sooner than we thought. Through her enhanced senses, Sarah could perceive them crossing the void between galaxies. Entities of pure thought and will that had once been the galaxy's greatest civilization. They had sensed the emergence of new transcendent beings and were returning to either recruit them or devour them. How long do we have? Admiral Zexhai asked. 6 months, maybe less. The weight of that knowledge settled over everyone in the communication network. 6 months to prepare for the return of entities that had consumed entire star systems. 6 months to prove that Sarah's path of community, transcendence, could stand against the individualistic corruption of the original architects. Then we work. Together, Sarah said, all of us. Human, alien, AI, everyone who values life and compassion over power and consumption. Across the galaxy, species that had hidden from advancement for millennia began to emerge from their self-imposed limitations. The Nemesis ships, instead of destroying developing civilizations, began to guide them toward Sarah's model of community transcendence on Earth. The 15 transformed humans became teachers and guardians, helping others with architect genetics to safely undergo the transformation. Each new transcendent human was connected to the network, anchored by the combined will and compassion of their community. Sarah stood on the bridge of her ship and looked out at the stars. For the first time in 300 years, human ships were leaving the solar system, not as conquerors or explorers, but as gardeners and teachers, spreading the message that transcendence didn't have to mean corruption. The barrier that had trapped humanity was gone, replaced by an open invitation to join the galactic community. But they were joining it as something new, not as primitive beings seeking advancement, But as a species that had found a way to grow in power while growing in wisdom, when the transcendent architects finally arrived, they would find a galaxy very different from the one they had left behind. A galaxy where transcendence meant connection rather than isolation, where power was shared rather than hoarded, where the strong protected the weak instead of consuming them. Sarah felt Wright's consciousness fully stabilized within the network, his madness replaced by wonder at the interconnectedness of all life. She felt Maria Santos teaching a group of alien botanists how to communicate with their plants. She felt David Kim working with archaeologists from a dozen species to unlock the secrets of ancient civilizations. This was what the architects could have become if they had chosen differently. This was the path between godhood and damnation that had eluded every species in the galaxy's history. Now, finally, someone had found it. The stars were no longer distant points of light, but neighbors waiting to be visited. The galaxy was no longer a cold and hostile place, but a garden waiting to be tended. Humanity had awakened something dangerous from the depths of their ocean. But in doing so, they had also awakened something beautiful. Hope.